Welcome to the Darkling Radio, a place where chilling stories come alive. Shadows whisper secrets, and every tale leaves you with a lingering sense of dread. Step inside if you dare. Ethan and Lila thought a simple swipe on a dating app could cure their loneliness, but what they didn't know was that someone or something was already watching them, learning their every move, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When I first downloaded the dating app, it felt harmless, like a distraction more than anything else. The loneliness had been gnawing at me for months, and the silence of my apartment at night felt heavier than it should have. My friends always told me that everyone used apps now, that meeting people in bars or bookstores was outdated. I wasn't looking for love, not really. Just a face, a conversation, a reminder that someone out there might notice me. Swiping through endless profiles became a strange kind of routine, almost like a game. Most people looked too polished, their pictures staged and rehearsed, their smiles frozen in carefully chosen poses. After a while, I stopped paying attention to the names or bios, and just let my thumb move out of habit. Then one profile made me pause. It wasn't glamorous. In fact, that was what caught my eye. The photos seemed ordinary, almost too ordinary. One picture showed her sitting on a park bench, hair slightly messy, a faint scar near her eyebrow. Another was taken indoors with a dim yellow light, shadows creeping along the wall behind her. The third was blurry, as though someone had taken it quickly without her noticing. None of them were edited or filtered. They looked real, raw, even vulnerable. I couldn't explain why, but I lingered on her profile longer than I had with anyone else. Her bio was short, just a handful of words. Liked old movies, long walks at night, and rain. That was it. No lists of hobbies, no dramatic quotes, no fake enthusiasm. Simple, quiet, but something about that quietness unnerved me more than it should have. My thumb hovered over the screen before I finally swiped right. Instantly, the word match appeared, filling the screen. The speed of it jolted me, almost as if she had been waiting there, staring at her phone, ready to respond the moment I touched the screen. The messages came fast. She asked questions about me, but they were vague, almost detached. What kind of bed did I have? Did I usually keep my curtains open or closed at night? How late did I stay awake? They weren't the typical surface-level questions about music or favorite foods. These felt sharper, too specific, like she was gathering details not for conversation, but for something else. I told myself she was just quirky, maybe awkward in her own way. Still, her replies unnerved me. They came instantly, as if she never needed to type at all. One moment I would hit send, and before I could even set the phone down, her next question appeared. I brushed off the unease, convincing myself it didn't matter. I was lonely, after all, and this was attention. As the night grew darker, I found myself scrolling back through her pictures again. I had only glanced at them before, but now I studied them carefully. That was when I noticed it's something I hadn't caught earlier. In the background of her first photo, behind her on the park bench, was a faint silhouette. Not another person sitting nearby, not a stranger walking past. It was a figure standing still in the distance, blurred and out of focus, but undeniably there. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to make out details, but the more I looked, the less human it appeared. Before I could overthink it, I set the phone down, telling myself I was imagining things. The scar on her eyebrow, the messy hair, the imperfect photos, they were real, and that's what I wanted, something real. Still, the questions replayed in my head. Why did she care if I kept my curtains closed? Why did she want to know what time I usually went to bed? Just before logging out, I gave in to the urge to check her profile one more time. My stomach tightened when I saw that something had changed. A new photo had been added since I matched with her. At first, I thought maybe it was an old one she had re-uploaded, but when I opened it, every muscle in my body froze. It wasn't old, it wasn't random. It was me. I was sitting at my desk, the glow of my computer screen casting shadows across my face. The exact shirt I was wearing that very moment. The picture wasn't one I had taken or posted anywhere. It was new, impossibly new. My hand trembled as I held the phone, staring at the image. Behind me in the photo, in the corner of my dimly lit apartment, there was another shadow, taller this time, closer, and I hadn't even heard anyone enter. I couldn't sleep after that. My body felt like it was humming with a low, frantic electricity, the kind that keeps your muscles tense and your breathing shallow. I shut my laptop, shoved my phone under a pillow, and walked around the apartment like I was patrolling enemy territory. My hands brushed across the door frames, the closet handles, the window locks, searching for something out of place. Every shadow seemed longer, darker than before, every corner capable of holding something I didn't want to see. The photo on the profile wasn't possible. That was the thought I kept circling back to. It wasn't just the shirt or the desk. It was the lighting, the exact positioning of my body. Someone had been there in the room with me, at the very moment I was sitting down. But the locks were intact, the chain still hooked across the front door, the windows sealed tight. I even dragged a chair over and climbed up to check the air vents, but they were coated with dust, untouched. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was a prank, some glitch in the app. Maybe someone had hacked into my webcam. That thought comforted me for a second until I remembered the second detail of the shadow in the background of the photo. Tall and distorted. If it had just been my webcam, there wouldn't have been a figure standing behind me. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me into bed. But my sleep was broken, jagged, like falling through thin layers of ice over and over again. At some point in the night, a vibration rattled against my nightstand. My phone screen glowed in the dark. My heart pounded as I reached for it. I had deleted the app earlier, determined to remove the match before anything else could happen. But this wasn't the app. It was a text message. No number was listed at the top, just a blank space, as though it had come from nowhere. Attached to it was another photo. My breath caught in my throat. This time the picture was of me in bed, the covers twisted around my legs, my face turned toward the wall, hair falling across the pillow. I hadn't taken it. I hadn't even been awake to notice. I threw the phone down like it was burning me and jumped up, tearing through my bedroom with frantic energy. I yanked open the closet door, pulled clothes from hangers, knocked boxes onto the floor. Nothing. I lifted the mattress, checked under the bed frame, pulled the dresser away from the wall. Still nothing. The apartment was silent except for the sound of my ragged breathing. The air felt colder, heavier, as if something was watching me but staying just out of sight. When I finally sat back on the edge of my bed, my chest was aching from how hard it was beating. I stared at the phone on the floor, waiting for it to buzz again. I wanted to smash it against the wall, but I was terrified of what might come through if I left it unanswered, as though the phone itself was a threat to something else. Hours crawled by. At some point I must have drifted into a half-sleep, because when the next vibration came, it jolted me upright with a sickening jolt of adrenaline. The screen lit my face as I unlocked it with trembling hands. Another text. This time no photo, just 3 words. I see you. The words glowed against the darkness of the room, simple and merciless. I held the phone away from me, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I turned it over, face down, not wanting to look anymore. But as I stared at the black glass back of the phone, my own reflection looked back at me, warped and faint. For a split second, I thought I saw another shape standing behind me in the reflection. A tall, thin outline, motionless, too close. I spun around, the room spinning with me, but the corner behind me was empty. The curtains hung still, the shadows unchanged. My throat went dry, my ears straining for any sound at all. There was nothing, just me, the phone glowing faintly, and a certainty that something had been there, even if it vanished the moment I turned. That night I left every light in the apartment on, but the brightness didn't chase away the feeling. It only made the corners deeper, the silence louder, and my reflection harder to trust. The next night, I decided I couldn't stay in my bedroom. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the radiator sounded amplified, deliberate, like it was meant to terrify me. I dragged my laptop and phone into the living room, sitting cross-legged on the couch and staring at the pale glow of the screen. Maybe if I stayed alert, if I kept my senses stretched taut, I could spot anything before it happened. Hours passed with nothing. The digital clock on the wall ticked loudly in the quiet. I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion, paranoia fueled by the photo, the texts, the endless impossibility of it all. But then I heard a soft scratching. At first I thought it was the wind outside, brushing against the window, but the sound was deliberate, steady, coming from just beyond the glass. I froze, heart hammering, and listened. Scratch, 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 slow, almost thoughtful. I inched toward the window, hands trembling, trying not to make a sound. The curtains were thick, but I pulled them aside just enough to peer through the glass. Nothing, just the faint reflection of my own pale face. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open. No one out there, no figure lurking, no shadow sliding along the wall. I exhaled shakily and stepped back, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. But then I noticed smudges on the glass. Vertical streaks like fingers had been dragged down slowly across the surface. I blinked, leaned closer. They were fresh, damp-looking, as if someone had pressed against the window with deliberate care. My stomach dropped. How could that be? I lived on the 5th floor. No one could have reached this far. Not without ropes or ladders, and even then, the possibility felt grotesquely impossible. I retreated into the center of the room, scanning every shadow. The smears didn't move, but their presence lingered like a threat. I wondered if the scratching had come from inside the apartment. But I had checked every corner so many times I thought I would know if someone was hiding. And yet, the idea of an intruder lurking somewhere unseen made me want to throw up. Morning came slowly, and I forced myself to rationalize the events. Maybe it was condensation, a reflection of light on the glass. Maybe the noise had been a branch brushing against the building. Maybe, somehow, my mind was playing tricks on me after the first photo. I tried to calm down, telling myself that logic had to exist somewhere, that fear was making me see things that weren't there. I turned to the fridge, hoping the act of making coffee or breakfast would normalize the morning. But when I opened it, My stomach dropped like a stone. The refrigerator, which had been neatly stocked with groceries, was empty except for one item. A single printed photograph lay on the bottom shelf. I froze, staring at it in disbelief. The photo showed me, sitting on the couch, eyes wide, staring at the window where the smudges had been. The angle was impossible to have taken from inside the apartment, or at least, it shouldn't have been possible. The camera had captured my expression perfectly, every detail of fear frozen on my face. My hands were clutching my knees, shaking, and behind me, in the shadows of the living room, there was a figure standing, just barely visible. It was tall, thin, featureless, except for a faint gleam where the eyes should have been. I slammed the fridge shut, my chest heaving, and ran through the apartment, checking every room again. Nothing, no one. The apartment was empty. The figure from the photo didn't exist in the real world, and yet the evidence was undeniable. Someone or something had been here, watching me, photographing me, knowing exactly what I was doing at every moment. That night, I didn't turn off any lights. Every electronic device was plugged in, every door double-checked, every window inspected. I sat in the middle of the living room, phone in hand, willing myself to remain awake. Every tick of the clock, every distant sound in the building made my nerves vibrate like taut wires. Then, just as I was starting to feel a twisted sense of vigilance, my phone buzzed. I hesitated, then picked it up. A new notification. Not a text this time, not a photo. It was a live feed. My own face appeared on the screen, framed by the very room I was sitting in. My eyes, wide with terror, stared back at me. And in the reflection behind me, almost imperceptible, the shadow loomed again, closer than ever before. I dropped the phone. The live feed continued to glow faintly on the carpet. The room was still silent, except for my own shallow breaths. But I knew it wasn't just a feed. It wasn't just a screen. It was watching me, waiting. And somehow, it knew I had noticed. I stopped leaving the apartment. Work, friends, even my own errands, all of it vanished from my life. I told myself it was precaution, that staying inside was the only way to keep safe. But the longer I stayed, the smaller my world became, and the more I felt that the walls themselves were closing in. Every time I moved from one room to another, I felt eyes on me, tracking, measuring, waiting. My phone stayed within arm's reach at all times, though I feared it as much as I needed it. Every notification could bring another image, another proof that I wasn't alone. Little things began to change. The closet door, which I always kept shut, was sometimes open when I entered the room. Drawers I had locked were slightly ajar. The faucet in the bathroom would drip when I knew I hadn't touched it. At first I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, paranoia manifesting in small, imagined disruptions, but the signs were becoming too deliberate, too consistent to ignore. Someone or something was moving in my apartment while I wasn't looking. I tried to document the disturbances, photographing the open doors, the disheveled drawers, the strange smudges on the mirrors. But when I reviewed the pictures, the anomalies seemed to vanish. The open closet door appeared closed, the scattered drawers were neatly shut, the mirror was spotless. The apartment was always pristine in the photos, as if my efforts to record proof were being erased before they could exist. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom altogether, retreating to the living room couch. My laptop sat open, my phone in hand, a fortress of electronics meant to keep me awake and alert. I watched the shadows stretch across the walls, counting the seconds as the minutes crawled past. My reflection in the darkened screen felt alien. Sometimes I thought I saw a movement there that didn't match my own, a slight delay, a twitch that wasn't mine. I broke the mirror the next morning. Shards flew across the floor, glittering like small knives in the pale light. For a moment, the apartment felt still. The weight lifted slightly from my chest. Maybe I had destroyed whatever had been observing me. Maybe now I could reclaim even a fragment of safety. Then my phone vibrated. My heart leapt into my throat. I wanted to throw it, smash it, crush it, but a part of me, terrified, obsessive, couldn't look away. I picked it up. Another message, not a photo this time, not a text with words. Something worse. A live feed. My own face filled the screen, framed by broken glass from the mirror I had smashed. My eyes, wide with panic, stared back at me. My hands shook violently as I held the phone, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, and in the reflection behind me, in the broken shards scattered across the bathroom floor, I saw it, not fully formed, not completely visible, but tall, looming, featureless except for faint, glowing eyes. It was closer than ever before, moving across the shards as if it knew the apartment better than I did. I couldn't move. My limbs refused to obey. The live feed continued, perfectly synced to the apartment I inhabited, perfectly tracking my every movement. I realized then that it didn't need me to be unaware. It didn't need to hide. It simply existed in a place I could not touch. A presence threaded through the walls, through the very structure of the apartment. The lights flickered, the electricity hummed. I tried to leave, tried to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. My phone buzzed again. Another message, another live feed, this time showing the living room, the couch, the space where I had spent the last weeks, and there it was, crouched in the corner, its head tilted slightly, watching me, didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. but I could feel it, a cold awareness pressing down, sizing me up, knowing I had noticed. I sank to the floor, trying to rationalize, to understand, to plan, but there was no plan. There was only the watching. Every noise, every flicker of light, every shadow became a threat. I realized then that this presence had been inside me long before I ever saw it, embedded in the app, in the photos, in the reflections. It was patient, it was calculating, and most of all, it was never going to leave. And as the night stretched on, I understood something truly terrifying. No matter how I moved, how I hid, how I tried to escape, I was already part of its collection. My life, my apartment, my fears, it had claimed them all. I left my apartment at dawn, suitcase in hand, heart hammering in my chest. Every step down the hallway felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life rather than my own. I didn't look back. I didn't pause. The elevator ride felt endless, the ding at each floor echoing like a countdown. Outside, the streets seemed different, somehow quieter, though the city had always been loud. My apartment behind me, the place that had been both home and prison, felt like it had vanished into another dimension, leaving only the memory of fear in its place. I hailed a cab and told the driver to take me as far from the building as possible. Every glance from passing pedestrians made me flinch. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward me. I checked the rearview mirror constantly, scanning for someone following, someone who had slipped through the cracks I didn't even know existed. Nothing appeared. Still, the unease didn't fade. The city felt alien, untrustworthy, and every small sound, the wind through the trees, the rumble of a truck passing by, even the faint hum of streetlights made me jump. I found a cheap motel on the edge of town. Its flickering neon sign promised anonymity and isolation. The room was small, the bed stiff, the curtains thick. It was perfect. No cameras, no shadows in corners, no sudden noises that couldn't be explained. I tried to calm myself, telling my mind that I had escaped. Finally, I could breathe. I set my suitcase down, closed the door, and locked it behind me, triple-checked the latch, and sank onto the bed. For the first time in weeks, I felt almost normal. I tried to convince myself that the app, the photos, the live feeds, had been some elaborate prank or a glitch, that the paranoia had finally broken me. I powered off my phone, ignoring the small, gnawing feeling in my chest that told me this wasn't over. I told myself I deserved this reprieve. I slept lightly, barely closing my eyes. When I woke, the sun was low, casting an orange glow across the room. I reached for my phone out of habit, though I knew it was off, but it wasn't off. The screen glowed faintly on the nightstand. My stomach sank, twisting painfully. I hadn't turned it on, hadn't touched it. Yet there it was, alive, illuminated in the dim light of the motel room. A notification blinked on the screen. Hesitantly, my hand shook as I reached for it. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. This time it wasn't a photo or a text message, it was a profile. My profile on the dating app I had deleted miles away, as if it had followed me. The bio was mocking in its simplicity. Loves old movies. Enjoys long walks at night. Looking for someone new. Beneath the text, a photograph had been uploaded moments ago. I looked closer. It was me, lying on this very bed. The same suitcase in the corner. The same stiff mattress. The same motel room. The angle, the shadows, the small details of the room. It was a perfect capture of my reality. My fingers froze on the edge of the phone. I wasn't just being watched. Someone or something was inside my life. Inside my very presence, capturing every movement, every breath. Panic roared through me, hotter and heavier than ever. I swung my eyes around the room, searching for anything, anyone, something physical. Nothing. The motel room was empty, silent, deceptively ordinary. My pulse pounded so loud I thought the walls would shake. I wanted to leave, to run, to escape again, but I realized that no matter how far I went, no matter how many doors I locked behind me, this presence could reach me. It had learned my patterns, followed me through the smallest details, and embedded itself into the tools I used. The devices I trusted, the spaces I thought were safe. I sank to the bed, trying to think, trying to rationalize, trying to find a loophole. But there was none. My reflection in the phone's screen seemed different, almost alive, shifting in a way I couldn't control. And in the faint light of the morning, I noticed something I hadn't before. In the corner of the screen, barely perceptible, a shadow moved, tilting its head, watching me. I realized then that there was no escape, no sanctuary, no final door to lock behind me. It wasn't just a person. It wasn't just a hacker. It was something else entirely, something patient, meticulous, omnipresent. It existed wherever I existed, collected me in images, tracked me in real time, and waited, always waited. The last thing I remember before I blacked out from exhaustion was the screen refreshing itself. Another image uploaded automatically. This one showed the motel room empty except for the corner where the shadow now crouched, grinning faintly, knowing it had one. When I woke again, the phone was gone. The room looked ordinary, untouched, but the profile remained online. And somewhere, far away, in another city, on another device, I knew it was watching, waiting, and I understood with a cold certainty that it would never stop.